Hello, everyone, and welcome back. If this is your first time joining, thank you for checking in. We are building out a full web application, so lots of stuff has already happened. If you want to check it out and get more information on the stream that I'm starting and the application, what all we've done, I'll have my YouTube channel that has all that information, so check that out. In general, we're building out a complete web application from scratch, going through step by step everything from DevOps to programming to unit testing. We're using AWS as a platform to build on. So we've been doing quite a bit. So with that said, I'm going to try to keep introductions a little bit shorter now. And again, if you're interested, just check out the channel and you have the complete playlist on everything we've done up till now. In the last episode, we introduced a new AWS service to our application called the Parameter Store. The service allows us to have our configuration items separate than our application code. So normally in the past, we've had property files, keep track of all the different properties for your application and different properties for different environments. So you'd have a dev properties, you'd have test properties, production properties, so on and so forth. Whenever you wanted to change a property, you would have to update your property file and do a brand new pull request, merge into your code base, and do a full code build and deploy to whatever environment that you need the update to go to. Parameter Store separates all of that out to where you just need to go to the Parameter Store service in the AWS Console, update your property, and then restart your apps as appropriate. Parameter Store integrates with other AWS services. So if you have something like CloudFormation, it will integrate with that to where you can control a size of your EC2 instances based on that parameter. So you can have a small instance for your dev and a large instance for your production, all controlled with the Parameter Store. So if you want to ever update that, you go to your Parameter Store, update, and off you go. The other nice thing that Parameter Store gives us is the idea of encrypted things. So in the past, you obviously never want to store a password in your property files in plain text, visible passwords, because then anybody that has access to repo would know all your passwords, which is bad. So with Parameter Store, you have the option of encrypting your property, and that allows you to make sure all your credentials and passwords and such that your application needs to run is all encrypted and safe and secure. We were able to integrate everything with Spring Boot in the last episode, run everything locally, have all the parameters come in. At the end of the video, it's getting pretty long. I wanted to try to test it by going through our pipeline and deploying it to a EC2 instance and see if it would work. I ran into some issues, it looked like, with doing that with EC2 instance not having authorization to reach the Parameter Store. So instead of trying to triage on camera and have it even longer, I wanted to kind of triage offline and figure out what's going on, and then this is just a update on what I did to fix it. That way, if you're following along, you can replicate these steps and you should be good to go. Alright, so a few things to start off with. We are logged into the AWS Console using an admin account, so it has access to all different services. One of the services I used quite a bit in triaging was the CloudWatch service that we had set up in previous episode. On the left hand side is the log groups, and there's a group for our application that will come up. So when we go in here, it gives all of the different streams and different logs that has happened on our application layer. So in the past, I might be able to find an older timestamp. These should be from yesterday. Yep. So we were seeing this exception being thrown saying that the role that this is using is not authorized to get use this functionality on the resource for our parameter store. So it's 400, it's a permissions issue, access denied. So we had to figure that out. This actually gave some really good information. So it's a role issue. So, and this is a role that is being used. So I was able to go to the IAM service and look up this role and see all the policies attached to it. And then that's sort of how I started triaging what was going on. So we'll go ahead and go to the IAM service. On the left-hand side is roles. And this is the role that I was trying to use, EC2. This is basically the role that's assumed by our EC2 instances to connect to other things via Elastic Beanstalk. So, what's next? So then I looked in here. I started trying to find SSM policies. So if I look under policies, I can search for SSM. And there's lots of different roles. So there's Amazon EC2 role for SSM, but this says it's going to be deprecated soon. So I didn't want to use this if it's going to be going away. So it said to use this policy instead. So do a quick search on that policy. Comes with these permissions. So the next step I did was to add this policy to the role. So into my EC2 role, attach policies, search for it, selected it, attach policy. I went to my Elastic Beanstalk environment and did a full rebuild of the environment. I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. And then resubmitted a request, and I seen it still had issues. So it's back to CloudWatch. Go back to my log groups and go back to my service. Look at one of these that failed again. So the other key piece was this is the action is trying to do that didn't have permission to do. So get parameters by path. So once I seen this, I went back to the IAM policy that it recommended to see what all that has. So if I go back to IAM, go back to the policies and search for that same policy. We can take a look and see what all it has permissions to do. So I see there's a get parameters and get parameter, but not get parameters by path. So this policy still does not allow it to use that action. So I didn't look around too much to see if there's another out-of-the-box policy that would work. So what I ended up doing was just copying this policy itself. And I created a brand new policy as a policy I will manage. So I can go to JSON, paste this in here, and here I just added the permission it's looking for, which I believe it was that by path. Hit review policy, and it'll ask you for a name, so I give it my own name, so on and so forth. Then you hit create policy, and it'll create one for you to use. So then if I go back to searching for SSM, there's this SSM custom policy. And that's the one I created. So it has give parameters by path as part of the actions it can do. Anything with this AWS symbol is policies managed by AWS. So this is since it does not have a symbol here, this shows that this is a policy that's custom and that we are controlling. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I'd rather use one of the ones that they manage. That way if they change it, I don't have to worry about changing mine every time there's an update. And there could be in here what we're looking for. So like this just gives full access to everything. That would probably work too. But I didn't want to go through all these to figure out what one would be what we would need. So I took the core, added that additional role that I was looking for, and I'm just using this custom policy. So after I created the policy, I went back to my role, then I attached a policy. So attach policies. I search for mine, which it probably won't come up since I already added it, and attached policy, and it gets attached. So now my role should have access and permission to what it needs to do. So the next thing we need to do is have that be reflected in our actual application that's running. So I went back to Elastic Beanstalk that we're using for our environment. Went to our dev environment. Up in the top right is the actions menu, and there's a couple of different options. One is restart app servers, and at first I tried this, and after it restarted I tried to submit my request again through Postman and it still failed, and I thought that was strange. So I wanted just to rebuild the entire environment just to make sure I have all fresh pools, all fresh IPs, all fresh everything, nothing's getting cached, so on and so forth. And once I did that, it worked fine. So I'll go ahead and rebuild. A little warning saying it takes several more minutes, blah, blah, blah. Hit rebuild. And this led me to another discovery on how Elastic Beanstalk works. So if you rebuild your environment, the Elastic IP associated to the previous environment is decommissioned, and you'll be assigned a new Elastic IP address. At first I didn't realize that's what was going on. I kept on submitting a request, and I wasn't getting any feedback. It didn't come up with the 502 exception. It wasn't coming back with like a 200 status. It was just not doing anything. It just says I couldn't reach that IP address. And down here it says what the Elastic IP address is that it will be assigned. So that should pop up here in a couple minutes. And I also went to the EC2 instance itself to see what the EIP address is, just to make sure I had the right one. Alright, hopefully not too much longer. So let's remove the instance. It should come up with removing all security groups, removing the original EIP address. Yep, so those two things happened. Then it should come up that it's going to assign a new elastic IP address, and it'll come up with creating new security groups. Then it'll create new EC2 instances. All that fun jazz should be happening here momentarily. So I have my new elastic IP address. So we'll go ahead, while this is still loading, go postman and update this. That way that's all updated. And I'll go ahead and save. So a little bit of filler while this builds. Now that we have our EC2 instance being healthy again, and our parameter store being all up to date, and able to inject in the DynamoDB access key and access secret, I'm going to go ahead in the next video and do some more coding layer stuff on integrating the DynamoDB in from our code. So I'll probably be looking up best practices on how to use DynamoDB with Spring Boot, and try to do a simple CRUD operations through the test services endpoint. So I'll have a service layer that will interact with DynamoDB system. It'll have your normal CRUD operations as different methods and such I can call, and then I'll call that from the test services endpoint. That way I can invoke that, and I'll do an insert. I'll see if I can read what I just inserted, if I can update what I just inserted, and if I can delete that new record successfully. That'd be our CRUD operations. I can call anytime I want to test to make sure my DynamoDB stuff is working correctly. So that'd be the next video. Might take a couple videos. Depends on how long and what path I take. I might try to do TDD style for that. So I'll write the unit and integration tests first before like live production code. I haven't quite decided yet. Alright, so our environment's back up and it's healthy. So if I go back to Postman and send my request, I now have all of my test cases passing again. So the login that we originally had is passing, as well as the test for our parameter store to make sure we can get some parameters coming from there injected in via Spring dependency injection. So this all seems to be working fine. And the login part I also like to see working, because we removed that confidentials file I had, the class, to keep track of all these secret stuff off camera, and we're still passing it in through parameter store, and that is still passing. So I'm able to pass in my Robinhood username, password, and device token from the parameter store in an encrypted way and log into Robinhood through our application. So that all is awesome. Let's see. So that's pretty much it I want to do for this video. I just want to jump on and take a few minutes to go through what I did to fix the last issue. So again, now that we have all this working, the next couple videos will be about DynamoDB, getting that integrated in. And once we have that, we'll probably do some front end stuff. So see what all front end languages we want to use, what kind of design we want. Try to have a login page and maybe see if we can save the username and password and such from a front end into our DynamoDB database, then use that to get the token instead of passing in through a parameter store. So that way, if you're your user, you log into your account, you would have a form to fill out of what your Robinhood username and password and device token is. Save that, and it would be able to retrieve your token. So I'm excited about that. Try to get some front end work in, and we'll see how that goes. So again, thanks for joining, and stick around, and we'll keep plugging away at this application. But that is all I had for today. Thank y'all. Bye.